Hello folks, and welcome to another edition of the Dr. Mark Foster Show. Today is Sunday, June 16th of 2013. Today I will continue my sequence of programs on the subject of what I have called contact emancipation. For any of you who might be new to my thinking on this subject, I will give a brief refresher as to what I mean by that term. It is a combination, obviously, of two words, contact and emancipation. By contact, I mean extraterrestrial contact, or what I generally refer to as trans-terrestrial contact. Trans-terrestrial, in my view, is a much broader term. It can include not only extraterrestrials, but hypothetically, transdimensionals, subterrestrials, oceanic beings, transtemporal beings, or time travelers. So I prefer the term trans-terrestrial. And I think that contact with these beings has taken a variety of forms, but the most well-known one is one which is, I think, the very commonly misinterpreted alien abduction phenomena, or contact experience phenomena. The second, the word emancipation. Here I am using emancipation as it was, to my understanding, used by British philosopher Roy Bhaskar. In his philosophy of meta-reality, Bhaskar identifies emancipation with what he refers to as the cosmic envelope. The cosmic envelope is the state of unity, the state of non-duality, what he sometimes calls co-presence. It is the ground state of all existence. That's the cosmic envelope. Once we unite with that cosmic envelope, by definition, we have experienced emancipation. In my view, the whole point of contact experiences with trans-terrestrial beings and other angels, including departed angels, is to help us on that journey toward emancipation, individually as well as collectively. So that is why I use the term contact emancipation. Now, today I will be referring to my newest book, and there will be a link to this book directly below the program. It is called The Great Blunder: A Contact Emancipation Refused. What I have tried to do in this book is to lay out some of the reasons for why I think that there has been such enormous secrecy or confidentiality surrounding the entire trans-terrestrial issue. Why it is, for example, that the U.S. government has never officially acknowledged their existence, and instead have come up with all sorts of alternative explanations, like the ever-famous swamp gas. And I think that is for a very good reason. I think that is because of a particular event which, if revealed, would cause such anger and consternation among the peoples of the United States, and indeed of the world, that they simply could not reveal it. And therefore I think that, at least in the present world order, any official revelation by the U.S. government is extremely unlikely, unless they have absolutely no choice. And it's primarily not for the reasons most people think. It's not primarily to avoid upsetting people or challenging dominant scientific paradigms or releasing confidential proprietary technology, although all of those may perhaps be factors. But there is one thing which outshines all of them, and that is what I want to deal with in this program. I think it makes sense out of the whole thing. I am certainly not the first person to have discovered this. I also don't claim that what I am saying is necessarily correct. I am not, God forbid, infallible. I am an individual Baha'i. I am a seeker of knowledge. I look at things from a certain perspective, my own. I have changed my mind many times over the years, and I expect that I will continue to do so in the future. I also have no access to any confidential intelligence information. All of the information I will be presenting is entirely a result of my own personal reflections and understandings of the materials I have read. What I have tried to do, however, is to separate out what I think are the legitimate events which took place that I will discuss from the conspiratorial interpretations of those events. And I think that once you do that, then the entire issue makes much more sense. I will also say that since I came to this understanding a couple of days ago, I became very, very emotional. I started crying. Before 2011, crying would be something that I would very rarely do as an autistic person. I had very low level of empathy, perhaps no empathy at all. I don't know. Now I am filled with empathy. And because I love these trans-terrestrial beings very much, when I discovered what I think I discovered, it was, for me, a very painful experience. Perhaps it will be for you too, if you agree with me. So, here is what I think happened. And again, you can read this in more detail in the book. I'm not going to bore you with excessive reading. I may read a few things, but I will just summarize what is in various parts of the book in this program. Back in 1954, there was an extraordinary reported event. It is an event which, as I said, has, I think, been tremendously distorted. Rather than giving you my words to describe it, I will read you excerpts from the words of two other writers. First, Bill Hamilton, and second, Ralph Steiner. Begin with Bill Hamilton. I know the time frame was about the middle 1960s, when all of that official contact with extraterrestrials kind of slowed down. and I can suggest to you from what I've heard a possible answer. And that is this: that these people who met the contactees claimed that they had also met with our leaders, and that they had made them certain offers. But the offers were not offers of technology. It was only offers of help on straightening out certain problems which we have on our planet. And that these offers were rejected because they did not offer to share their technology with us. And we were primarily interested, from a military standpoint, in their technology. They didn't want us to go on a shooting spree throughout the universe using this kind of technology. They felt that we had already overproduced in the weapons department, and we were already bringing on ecological damage in the early 1950s, and they were very concerned about this. But they primarily told us that we had advanced our material sciences at too great a rate beyond what we had developed in our social and spiritual sciences, and that there needed to be a balance. This next quotation is from an interview that was given by Whitley Strieber, the host of the program Dreamland, on the unknowncountry.com website. First, Ralph Steiner. There are long-standing allegations that UFO landings occurred at Edwards Air Force Base, Muroc Airfield, in Southern California, beginning in, say, 1954. There might have been some earlier ones at other facilities. Landings at Air Force bases have been reported by scuttlebutt and rumor for decades, but the one that supposedly occurred in 1954, on February 20th of 1954, involved perhaps 3 extraterrestrial spacecraft. And at that time, President Eisenhower was golfing in Palm Springs on a vacation. The commander at Edwards Air Force Base supposedly sent for the president, who was, on an emergency basis, helicoptered out to Muroc Airfield, and supposedly had a face-to-face meeting with one of the occupants of the landed UFOs on the tarmac at Edwards Air Force Base. I remember that, when Eisenhower disappeared. When that event occurred, we were living in Palm Springs, California at the time, and it was all over the local media and the local television station, and was in the LA Times, that the president had had a heart attack and had keeled over and died. And there was a great deal of confusion there for about perhaps 24 hours. And then the president was hauled out by his press secretary with a dentist who claimed that he had simply chipped a tooth while eating a chicken dinner at a ranch. And that was that. Now Whitley Strieber. Normally, anyone who treats the president is sent a letter of thanks, and these letters are considered quite precious. I believe that UFO researcher Stanton Friedman discovered at the Eisenhower Library that the dentist had been sent no such letter. Well, the dentist would not attest to ever having done it. He wouldn't say that he had done this, and there's no letter. So, there you go. Again, Ralph Steiner. Well, what there is testimony from people who were on the base at the time, who have spoken to numerous residents and investigators who followed about events that did allegedly take place between the 20th and 23rd of February 1954, and it was stated that the president met with a particular group of aliens or ETs, and that an offer was made to help us resolve some of the pernicious threatening problems on our planet. But we had to first give up our nuclear weapons, our nuclear arsenal, our weapons of mass destruction. They would not transfer technology to our government because of the fear that we would abuse that technology and weaponize it and go out in the universe in an aggressive way and harm other civilizations. That is a frame of reference for the testimony that emerged during the era of the contactee movement in the early to mid-1950s when this story surfaced. There are allegations that after the event in 1954, this landing and their overtures to the Eisenhower administration, a redaction of an offer of planetary aid in exchange for giving up weapons of mass destruction took place. And the advisors supposedly advised the president not to accept that offer because, in essence, it would be tantamount to disarming in the face of what they perceived as an unknown potential threat from an advanced civilization. And that is the end of the quotation. Now, that event, assuming it occurred, and I personally think it did, but I don't know, has been distorted many times. The most common distortion is that extraterrestrials entered into a treaty with the U.S. government, but that the treaty was never ratified by Congress. According to the supposed testimony, the treaty basically required that the extraterrestrials should be allowed to abduct certain human beings for experiments, and then they would provide certain technology in return. According to this reinterpretation of it, it was the ETs, not the earthly humans, who failed to live up to the bargain. Very interesting distortion. And that is the more common way in which the story is presented, that the treaty was violated by the extraterrestrials. Well, no, I don't think that's what happened at all. I don't think that there was a treaty. I do think that there was an offer. And understandably, perhaps, given the Cold War environment of the time, the U.S. government declined. Perhaps other governments, like the Soviet government, declined too, although I don't know that. And as a result, we've had this ongoing, continuing stalemate with reported accounts of extraterrestrials showing up over nuclear weapons facilities around the world and shutting those facilities down. These craft have also allegedly appeared during times of various disasters, catastrophes, to monitor these things. So, although we, as earthly humans, made the decision through our leaders not to go along with what the transterrestrials offered us, in spite of that, the transterrestrials, they have realized that they need to do it anyway. So they are living up to their part of the bargain in a sense anyway, even though we have not been living up to ours. So really, we are the ones who violated the agreement. We turned down the angels. The angels were sent to us, and we said no. How awful. That's what made me so sad. Just imagining that we as human beings could have done something like that. Well, we've rejected prophets too. Prophets and their angels. When they come to us with a message which is inconvenient, it's very easy to reject them. Here is a related account, not exactly the same, but it sheds some light from a different angle on this possible event. This is from a letter that was written by Gerald Light back in April of that same year, 1954, to some friends of his. I have just returned from Muroc at Edwards. The report is true, devastatingly true. I made the journey in company with Franklin Allen of the Hearst Papers and Edward Norse of Brookings Institute and Bishop McIntyre of Los Angeles. When we were allowed to enter the restricted section, I had the distinct feeling that the world had come to end with fantastic realism. For I have never seen so many human beings in a state of complete collapse and confusion as they realized that their own world had indeed ended with such finality as to beggar description. The reality of the other plane aeriforms is now and forever removed from the realms of speculation and made a rather painful part of the consciousness of every responsible scientific and political group. During my 2 days visit, I saw 5 separate and distinct types of aircraft being studied and handled by our Air Force officials with the assistance and permission of the Aetherians. I assume that is the name that they used in presenting themselves to us. To conclude the letter, I have no words to express my reactions. It has finally happened. It is now a matter of history. President Eisenhower, as you may already know, was spirited over to Muroc one night during his visit to Palm Springs recently, and it is my conviction that he will ignore the terrific conflict between the various authorities and go directly to the people via radio and television if the impasse continues much longer. Of course, we now know that that did not happen. Instead, we refused the offer that was made to us by these wonderful beings. So, who are they? Well, here is my own interpretation. In my view, these beings are angels of the lesser peace. For anyone unfamiliar with that concept, the lesser peace is a Baha'i term for an intermediate stage between the present world order, or perhaps world disorder, and the golden age, or most great peace on this planet, the kingdom of heaven on earth. The lesser peace, according to the Baha'i teachings, is a political peace which will be established by nations themselves, not by the Baha'i community. The Baha'i community is not directly involved, or will not be directly involved. in establishing the lesser peace. So I think that is why there is not more information on this subject in the Baha'i teachings. It is not a Baha'i responsibility. These angels are not missionaries. They're not Baha'i pioneers or Baha'i teachers sent to spread the message of Baha'u'llah. Their mission, if I understand it correctly, is to help bring about peace on this planet, political peace. And they made a very valiant effort back in 1954. Whether they really expected the United States and other countries to go along with the offer, I would imagine they did not. But I guess in principle they had to make the offer. The offer was declined. We are now on the verge of destroying ourselves. Whether through Syria, whether through Iran, whether through environmental or ecological disaster, we are in pretty bad shape. We should have taken that offer that was made to us by these dear trans-terrestrial angels back in 1954. But we did not, and so we are here. Until next time, this is Dr. Mark Foster. Have a good one.